Good morning, Algebra 1. I'm just going to do a quick review of 8-1 to 8-3 for those who need it. You have my notes. They're on Edmodo if you misplaced them or left them at school. What do you need to remember? The first quiz covers 8-1 and 8-2. Ninth graders, you will need to take that, and it'll be posted on Edmodo later today. I just wanted to go over what you need to remember. The notes for 8-1 covered an awful lot of stuff. So just remember that you do have notes. I want to talk about degrees. If I have 6x minus 4, hopefully you remember that that's a binomial because it's got two terms. The minus could always be turned into plus a negative. Its degree is based on the variables. The first term has a degree of 1. The second term has a degree of 0 because it has no variables. Okay? If I were to change this to a 6x to the 4th power, that would be a 4th degree. If this had an x and a y added on, well, 1 plus 1 is 2, and that would be a 2nd degree. Now, the degree of my polynomial is just the biggest one. I do not add those together. Okay? So let's try one more. If I had x squared plus 2xy squared minus 7, 3 terms, a trinomial. This has a degree of 2. This has a degree of 3. This has a degree of 0. So the degree of my polynomial is 3. Hopefully you've got that. They also talked about how polynomials in one variable should be written in standard form. So if I had 9x squared plus 3x to the 6th minus 4x minus 6x to the 5th, well, I look at that and I kind of say, hey, man, it's not in a very good order. Let's change the order and put them, I want this one first because it has the biggest degree and it has the biggest exponent. So 3x to the 6th minus 6x to the 5th plus 9x squared minus 4x. So remember that minus is stuck to that 6. That minus is stuck to that 4. This is standard form because my variables go in order 6, 5, 2, 1. Okay? And I just use the commutative property. So that should all make sense. Now, they also will ask you about a leading coefficient. A leading coefficient is just that first one once you put it in order. Leading coefficient equals 3. That's tells you something about your graph. I look at that, and if I use the word stretched, maybe that would help you. Because remember, we did something where we had to say stretched, compressed, or reflected. That's what that leading coefficient tells you about the graph. Okay? But you really don't have to remember that until you get to Algebra 2. Okay, so we also talked about adding polynomials and subtracting polynomials. So if I was adding 7y squared plus 2y minus 3 added to 2 minus 4y plus 5y squared, some people can do that without rewriting it. Some people make mistakes and add the wrong things. I tend to just rewrite this one in standard form under the like terms because when I'm adding, that's really what I'm doing. I'm combining like terms. So I'm going to put my 5y squared here, my minus 4y here, my plus 2 here. Then I can add it up, and I've got 12y squared minus 2y minus 1. Okay, so it's up to you. Just be careful. Watch your minuses. Again, remember that minus is stuck to that 4. All right. If I'm subtracting, if I have 6y squared plus 8y to the 4th minus 5y minus 9y to the 4th minus 7y plus 2y squared. First of all, I look at that and I say, ooh, it's not, neither one of them's in standard form, so I would probably rewrite them both. I just write the first one in standard form, 8y to the 4th plus 6y squared minus 5y. When I write the second one, I'm going to distribute this negative through. And I'm going to write it underneath, so I've got my like terms in the right places. So minus 9y to the 4th, minus minus becomes plus. That goes here. Minus 2y squared goes in the middle. Then when I put them together, they're in standard form. Negative y to the 4th plus 4y squared plus 2y. Okay, that's a real quick review of 8-1 and the things you need to remember. (8-2) was all about distributing. Okay, distributing, multiplying by a monomial, but really we're just distributing. So if I had 6y times the quantity 4y squared minus 9y minus 7, all I'm going to do is distribute to everything that's in there. Okay, so that gives me 24y cubed, because 1 plus 2, minus 54y squared minus 42y. It's just that simple as distributing. That's why we had chapter 7 first, because you got to know how to add those powers. All right? In example 2, they just made it a little more complicated. If you had 2 to the 2t squared minus 4t minus 15, and you subtracted 6t times the quantity 5t plus 2, so they just added another step. Not only do you have to distribute here, you've got to distribute here and then combine like terms. Okay? So that becomes, like an addition problem. So I'm going to distribute the 3t. I'm going to distribute a minus 6t. Line up my like terms, and then I'm going to put them together. So I get 6t squared minus 12t minus 45. This is going to give me a negative 30t squared. And this is going to give me a negative 12t. And then I don't have anything here, so I just leave that blank. So I add my like terms, and I get negative 24t squared minus 24t minus 45. And that's done. Okay? In part 2, we got our first taste of solving. And so if I had b times the quantity 12 plus b minus 7 equals 2b plus b times the quantity -4 plus b. Again, it's just a more complicated equation, but it's just an equation, okay? You're just going to distribute, simplify, distribute, simplify, okay? And then you solve it. And you might be looking at this and say, ooh, I've got a 12b plus b squared. What do I do with a b squared? And this one gives me 2b minus 4b plus b squared. Well, hey, if you kind of look at that and look at it carefully, you know, hey, those are going to cancel out. And at this point in time, you don't know how to solve it with a b squared yet. That's coming. Okay? But they're not going to give you something you can't solve. So if you get a b squared, you did something wrong. So now I've got 12b minus 7 equals -2b. Subtract 12b from both sides, and I get -7 equals -14b. Be careful. Some people like to say, oh, 2. Well, it's wrong because you've got to divide by -14, and that gives you that b equals 1/2. Okay? So again, that's a very quick review of what you did in 8-2. 8-3, and what you're going to need to remember for the second quiz is that there are a lot of different ways to multiply polynomials. And in 8-3, there are 3 in the book, and there's 1 extra in my notes. And you need to know how to do at least 2 of them, okay? So in 8-3, the first method they talked about was the vertical method. And the vertical method is just like how you learned how to multiply regular numbers. If you had 2-digit numbers, if I had 21 times 37, I'd line it up. Now I'd probably put the 37 on top, but you get the idea that you multiply by the 7 first, and then you multiply by the 3, and you get your 2 partial products, and you add them together. Well, the vertical method is exactly the same. So I'm going to take my 2, and I'm going to line them up. Y plus 8, y plus 4. I'm going to multiply, oh, that's a -4. So first I'm going to multiply by my -4. -4 times 8 is -32. -4 times y, -4y. Okay? And then I'm going to multiply by my y, and I get 8y, and it's positive, so it's a plus, y squared. And then I just add my terms together. Y squared plus 4y minus 32. Okay? So vertical method, not too tricky. Just like what you used to do when you were multiplying numbers, works kind of the same way. The horizontal method uses the distributive property in a slightly different way. So if I had 2x plus 1 times x plus 6, I'm going to multiply both of these by 2x, and then I'm going to multiply by 1. So I'm going to have 2x times x plus 6, and I'm going to add 1 times x plus 6, and then I'll have to simplify by combining like terms. So that's going to give me 2x squared plus 12x plus x plus 6. Multiplying by 1 doesn't change anything. Here are my like terms in the middle, and that gives me 2x squared plus 13x plus 6. Okay? So horizontal is just making good use of the distributive property. FOIL is one of my favorites, and I probably use it the most often. FOIL stands for firsts, outsides, insides, lasts. Okay, firsts, outsides, insides, lasts. That does kind of give you your outsides and insides together, which will be like terms, usually. Okay, so if I have the quantity m minus 6 times the quantity m minus 12, okay, my firsts are going to give me an m squared. My outsides are going to give me a minus 12m. My insides are going to give me a minus 6m. And my lasts are going to give me a positive 72. These are like terms. I need to put those together. So I end up with m squared minus 18m plus 72. Now, if you kind of squint at that with an abstract eye, it kind of looks like a happy baby boy. There's his nose, there's his eyes, and he's got a smile and a chin and a little bit of hair. Okay? That's just kind of abstract art. The other method is called the box. And if you've had genetics, it works just like a Punnett square. Okay? So if I was doing a box for the quantity 2x plus 9 times the quantity 5x minus 6, I would need a 2 by 2 box. I write one of them across the top, one of them across the front, okay? And then I'm going to just multiply. 5x times 2x gives me 10x squared. 5x times 9 gives me 45x. Negative 6 times 2 gives me negative 12x. Negative 6 times 9 gives me negative 54. My like terms are along the diagonal. Okay? So this is going to give me 10x squared. 45 minus 12 is 33. So plus 33x minus 54. Okay? Now, all of these methods will work for binomials. When you're multiplying a binomial times a binomial. FOIL will not work with trinomials. The rest of them will. Okay? So I will often use the vertical method or the box for trinomials. And if you checked your worksheet 8-3, you should see that. All right. We'll talk to you later. Bye.